Yes. You can't find your game anymore. Where did you? Well, it's not going to be in the R drive. Remember, your game's going to be in your drive here. Here. Inside game and web. Inside construct. So now we'll look for date modified. Capture the flag was modified. Jungle platformer, these are probably just the images. Capture the flag is there. I don't know where you saved it. Because this is the one that I see edited yesterday at 9:04. And then we need the one that was edited Tuesday. Or you're not here on Tuesday.
Do you want me to just restart it?
Yeah, just restart it. All right, you got control again. Yes.
How do we make it so he doesn't spawn in the middle?
This is literally over.
I'm trying to make the layout, add more stuff to the layout, and it spawns the one in the middle. I'm just trying to make it spawn in the middle.
What do you mean you're trying to make it not spawn in the middle? Take your character on the layout and move the player box. Because remember, the player moves to where the player box is located. So player box is what you're looking to move. That needs to start over here with the player. Okay? All right. Please quiet down the side conversations. I'm going to get started now. I think everybody's sorted out, waiting to go. We are on adding in the snail enemy. And just like adding in the player animations, we're going to add in animations, but we need to make a new sprite for the snail enemy. So on here, I'm going to add a new sprite onto main. Over here for the frames, I'm going to adjust and import frames from Sprite Strip. I'm going to browse to enemies, and I'm going to grab the snail. If I grab the whole piece, it knows it's 17 cells 17 cells horizontal by 1 cell vertical. I'll replace the existing empty animation. And now I can see I have my snail. But just like we did with the player animations, we have a lot of empty white space around the snail we're not using. So if we hold Shift on the keyboard and press the Crop Transparent Edges button, it'll crop the entire animations. You can see everything moves in a lot tighter for the enemy. The other thing we want to adjust is the origin point. We want to put the origin point at the middle of the image at the bottom. So I'm going to press 2 on the number pad and watch that origin point update on frame 0. I'm then going to right click on this origin over here and apply that to the whole animation. As far as the numbers, we'll set the animation to 15 frames per second, even though there are 22 frames. 16 frames. It means it's going to take the snail a little bit longer than a second to do its complete lurch up and lurch down. Loop will set to yes. And then I'll find somewhere that this fits on here just to preview and see what it looks like. So this is the same thing we've been doing. We just made a new sprite with a new animation. And there it is. I got to adjust it so it's like right on the ground, but there's the animation piece for it. So right now our player doesn't interact with the snail yet, but we can write that code in pretty quickly. We crapped everything, we placed it in. We're going to go with Super Mario Brothers logic on here, where if the player lands on top of the snail will get destroyed. And if the player hits the side of the snail, the player is going to get hurt. So what we'll do to show that the player has been hurt is we'll go over to the actual player, not the player box, and we're going to add a behavior called flash, and it's this lightning bolt icon. So now we can actually have the system flash on and off when the player hits the side of the snail. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look for when the player box collides with the enemy. So on the event sheet, we're going to add another event, and it's going to be player box on collision with another object, and that object's going to be the sprite. I didn't rename it to snail. So I'm going to rename sprite to snail enemy, or enemy snail. And the action we're going to add here is nothing, because we have multiple conditions under which we could hit the snail. We can hit the snail from the top or from the side. So what we'll do is we'll add a blank sub-event by pressing B on the keyboard. Oh, I renamed it to B. Pressing B on the keyboard with this event selected will make a new blank sub-event, and that new blank sub-event is going to check if the player box is falling. Okay? Now, if we're falling, we want to also check. So I'm going to right-click and add another condition. I want to check and see if the player box's Y value. So we'll do compare Y for the player. Now, here we have to say, is it less than enemy snail.y? The reason why we're doing less than is because remember, 0 is the top of the screen for the Y. 0 is up at the top. So when that's all set, now we have our condition. So when you hit the snail, is the player falling and is the player above the snail on the screen? If it is, we're going to add action to the snail, destroy, and we'll add a little response to the player. And what we're going to do on the player box is we're going to set the Y vector momentarily to -700, and that's going to make the player jump up. Okay? Now, what happens if we're not falling and if we're not above the enemy when we hit it? Well, we're going to come back up to number 18 and press B for another blank sub-event. And then this sub-event is going to be system else. So we'll double-click, we'll get system else. And what we'll do is we'll ask the player to flash. And we'll just go with the default flash. It'll be flash on for 0.1, flash off for 0.1 for 1 full second. So if we go and check this now, and we run this, if I walk into the side of the enemy, I flash. If I land on top of the enemy goes away, and I pop up a little bit from that happening. So that was the on collision with enemy snail. But if the snail isn't moving, it's not really challenging to hit it. It's like a still target. So we want the enemy to have like a little bit of AI where it moves back and forth across the platform. So what we'll do is we'll actually add platform control or behavior to the snail. However, we don't want the snail to move when the player presses keys on the keyboard, so we're going to go to platform default controls and say no. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to make 2 invisible edge markers for the snail to move between. So that's going to be a new sprite. So the new sprite is going to be here. Guys, conversations in the back need to stop. New sprite, I'm just going to make it a color green that's transparent. We'll deal with the transparency afterwards where you can make those invisible on starter layout so you don't actually see them. Size, I'm going to resize this to be 40 by 40 pixels. So it's going to be pretty small, and it's just going to be something that will eventually turn invisible, and I'm going to put 2 of them on the outside of the platform. So that way the enemy can simulate moving, and when the enemy hits this marker, speaking of which, we want to rename it from sprite to edge marker. So it's a marker for the edge. So when the player hits the edge, this enemy snail hits the edge marker, we're going to tell it to simulate going in the other direction. But in order to simulate going in any direction, we need to have an instance variable with which way it's going. So I'll right-click on the enemy snail, instance variable, and I'm going to add a new instance variable called action, and it's going to be a text. And I'm going to give it the value of right because the snail is facing to the right by default. So the snail is facing to the right, and now we have to do some logic to determine when the snail needs to move the other way. So that logic is going to be our new event here, and it's going to be on the snail, and we're going to ask it to compare instance variables. If instance variable action is equal to right, then we're going to add an action for the snail enemy to simulate platform control, and we're going to simulate going to the right. We're also going to set the snail enemy to be not mirrored, because we'll have to mirror it to go left, and then we want it to be not mirrored when it decides to go right again. So I'm going to copy and paste this whole line to duplicate it. And then for this one, I'm going to change it and say when the value is equal to left. We're going to simulate pressing left, and we're going to set it to mirrored. So now we know which way it wants to go, but the action starts off going to the right. We need the condition under which the snail's going to turn and face the other way. So the condition, the event that's going to cause that, is going to be snail on collision with another object, and that object is going to be edge marker. So when we hit edge marker, we don't know which action we're going to take yet. We've got to make another decision yet. So I'm going to press B to get another blank sub event, and it's going to have to check and say snail action, compare instance variable. And we're going to say, is action equal to right? Because if action is equal to right when we hit the edge marker, then we want to take the snail and set the value of edge marker to left. And notice I'm putting quotes around all these as I type these in, because they're no longer just numbers. I have to actually put them in as the text values. The other condition here is going to be enemy snail. Actually, we don't even need enemy snail. We can do another new one here. That's system else again. So this one's going to be system else. And what we can do on here is we can say enemy snail set value. And this one will say if it was already right, we're going to set it left. And now if it's not right when we hit it, we want to set it back to right. So now if I run this, our enemy should be sliding back and forth between the edge markers. Let's see. Nope, not going anywhere. So I did something wrong. Let's see. Action left, platform pressing left, pressing right, mirrored, not mirrored. Did I leave controls on here? Enemy snail. If action is equal to right, simulate pressing right. Snail not mirrored. Is he not up there because he's stuck on the ground? Nope. I want to adjust the speed. Did we adjust the speed? All right, I got it. So now my snail is moving. What I misjudged is on the first one, on your instance variables, don't put quotes around the value right. Only when we're comparing it on the event sheet should we have quotes around the value right. So the other thing that I did here, so here I do need quotes around it, here I need quotes around it, but when we set the instance variable, no quotes. So this is moving around left and right, but if this is set to the initial 330 by 1500, the snail moves awfully fast. So check this out. That's a pretty speedy snail. So what I'm going to do on the snail is I'm going to adjust its platform max speed to be 50, and its acceleration to be 100, and its deceleration to be 100. And we'll rerun this, and the snail will move around a little bit slower. Yash, what's up? He still is not moving. So, did you go and on the instance variable, get rid of the quotes for the value right? On the event sheet, if action is right, simulate pressing right. Action is left, simulate not pressing left. So he's here, he's not moving. No quotes over here. One second. So we do have quotes over here. On collision with edge marker 1. And snail right, simulate right, not mirrored, simulate left. And then on the actual event sheet, where's our instance variable RIGHT? Action is right. If action is equal to right, simulate pressing right. On here, did we disable default controls? I'm just going to run it from up in the air, see if he drops. Wait a minute, why is the snail flying like that? We added platform. This is interesting, Yash. I don't know why your snail isn't falling to the ground.
The snails don't fall, they stay in the air.
The snails don't fall, they stay in the air?
Yeah, mine's
Is there like a grassy?
No, wait, mine's fell. Did he add the platform thing to it? Okay, that's why.
Platform is here. It should be falling. Snail enemy, platform is here.
Oh, is snap on? Is snap to grid on?
No, that wouldn't.
No, snap to grid is on.
But it only changes stuff in the editor.
Yeah, snap to grid will only change things in the editor. It should be falling. Yash, delete and remake your snail. All right. Eddie, what do you got?
I don't know what happened, but when you were trying the instance variable with the snail, I just didn't comprehend that.
Okay. Yash, did you set your instance variable to be text instead of number? Okay. So snail, instance variable, you have it as a number. We don't want it to be a number. We're going to edit this instance variable. And I don't know why we can't change it. We're going to delete that one. And we're going to set this new one to be text. Action. And right as the initial value. Okay? So you lost this one here, and you need to get, so there's the else system. We lost those there because we had to delete the instance variable, but you can fix that one here, and then this one needs another blank sub-event above it to be the condition before, okay? And then, Alex, what do you got?
For some reason, my mirror, like when I set it here, it like switches out and it doesn't turn back around.
Under what condition are you mirroring them?
Action right. I mean action left.
What is the event that triggers the action?
Not a feminist thing.
The action goes right and set action left.
Nope. Stop for a second. So on here, if we check out this instance variable, this should be text and it's a value of right. So over here, when we're going to the right, we want to be not mirrored. When we're going to be the left, we want to be mirrored. And then this one here needs to be snail, compare instance variable, action is equal to right. Control C to copy, Control V to paste. This one's going to be action is equal to left. Okay? Keep going with those and keep going making this condition inside here.
You're on mine.
Who am I on still?
You're on mine. You fixed it up for me though.
Oh, well, way to sit there and say that. Sometimes it picks up on the other one. All right, let me look at this again, because now this could be completely different. So on here, snail enemy, instance variables, text right. So right, we're not mirrored. Left, we are mirrored.
Isn't there, you don't have to mirror stuff, it works fine when I add the mirror, it like doesn't change.
So on the event sheet, the snail starts off with an action right. Where's the edge marker? Snail on collision with edge marker. Set action to left. Else set action to right. So we open this in debug. All right. On here, where's our edge marker? You said invisible, right? For right now, I want to see when it actually hits it. So snail enemy on collision with edge marker, condition snail action left, action right. Action equals right, action equals left. Snail enemy on collision with edge marker. LEFT, RHHT. I don't want to run that out, I want to do debug. And I want to find the snail. One second. Action is still right, so it's still right. So on here, it's not on collision with edge marker. If action is equal to right,
For some reason, when I don't have like not mirrored and mirrored, for some reason, when I delete those, like it works fine. But I don't know why.
so if I delete this and this, it's gonna work. He's just gonna walk backwards.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
So you lowered the speed for the snail, right? You have the edge marker moved left and right. What does your snail frames look like? Did we shift click all of them? I think I know what's happening. So I'm gonna hold shift and click all these to see if there's anything that needs to be cropped. You might have not cropped all of them.
Oh, so when it turns around, like
It was hitting it again.
Yeah.
Okay? So on here, I'm gonna press number 2 to get this to move down exactly right in the middle. I'm gonna shift, right click, apply to whole animation. Apply to whole animation. And I'm gonna shift click and see if there's any more cropping that we can. So the cropping has happened. So now over here, add action. So this one's mirrored. So yeah, so because your thing was off, he would turn and he would hit it again, and then it would turn right back. So it's just the hitbox was off by a little bit. Marissa, what do you got? I can't hear you. Come up here. What's up? It says system else isn't valid. This isn't you. This is you. Else isn't valid because else shouldn't be a sub-event of this. Else is a sub-event here. So now you'll see it's a valid else. Because this is the action, this is the else that it follows. It couldn't be a sub-event because it was moving directly above it. Okay? Joey. All right. So you can run into your snail and nothing happens. Because, let's see, on collision with snail, here's the problem. This is one condition, and then that's the else. Okay? So now take a look and see. Better? The snail isn't moving. Is your instance variable text? And you gave the value of capital right. So over here, you're checking lowercase right. So it never starts off in that loop that way. Now, over here, we got to adjust its speed to 50, 100, 100. And then if action is right, set snail. The other thing this depends on is having your origin point middle of the bottom. Everything's been shift cropped. Origin, I'm going to use number 2 on the keyboard to move it all there and apply it to every part of the frame, or every part of the animation. And then we're going to test it one more time. Jungle platform. Come on, turn around, turn around. Bye, snail. Oh, you made it. You're on live stream, so. On edge block 2, and you meant edge block 1. Okay, so if we check that here and see. Come on, turn around. There we go. All right, so now he's turning around. I'm going to let you go. Alex, what do you got? Your hand was up.
So, is there a number that has to be for that, or?
No, it's text actually. Set the instance variable to be text, not a number. You're going to have to delete it and remake it because you only get one shot at choosing between number, text, and Boolean. We want text because we're going to toggle between left and right. It's easier for us to understand left and right than 0 goes to the right and 1 goes to the left, which is what numbers would give us. Okay?
So, when we're actually
For action, it should be, hold on. So add one, change it from type, from number, so action is the name, type is text, and then the value is lowercase right. Okay? Now see if that fixes your issues. Anthony, get back on task, please. Archie, how you doing? Because I'm going to go back to the next instructions. Archie, come on, get with it. I see very little updates from the tiles. Please go back to Monday's YouTube live stream to work with that. Thank you. Video's picking up me, and then they'll heal a little bit of that. All right, the last things that I'm going to do on here is going to be cloning the platform, because now my player is moving around. I'm going to clone the tiles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick one tile, I'm going to do clone object type, and I'm going to get tiles 2. I'm going to take tiles 2 and change it to tiles jump through. On this tiles 2 behavior, I'm going to get rid of solid, and I'm going to add jump through, which is the first selected attribute. And then I'm going to go to, I think it's 134, 135. And control click to get another one, change this one to 135. So now, when I select these, I have a new type of platform that I'm not going to hit into, but instead I can jump through. 134, 135. So my snail is moving around. If he hits me, I flash. If I hit him, I bounce. But now I can jump through, and I can fall through. So I had to make a clone of the platform type so I could jump through it, because if it was still solid, I would get stopped right here. All right, then the last feature I'm going to add is parallax. So on the actual background layer, there's a layer property called parallax that's set to 100 by 100. I'm going to lower it to be 50 by 50. Then I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to take all of the stuff that I have in my layout, and I'm going to move it down lower. The reason why I'm moving it down lower, because watch what happens with the parallax effect now. Now the background is going to be scrolling at a slightly different rate as the foreground. And so to get to parallax, I went to the background layer. On the background layer properties, I set it to 50 by 50. And this is the effect that it gives us. Here's my character, and then the background just kind of scrolls a little bit differently than it would. Okay? From here, I'm going to stop the stream and come around and check and see where people are, and see where people are having issues. Your task now is to build a comprehensive level, add power-ups from the power-up sprites, and add the other two enemies, the bee and the coconut. And I'm going to leave it here.